Okay, introductions wise, I'm going to try to share my screen, but as I'm getting that going, my name is Steve Foster. Um, this is going to be our ninth cohort over the last 11 years. We took a 2-year hiatus for COVID. And oops. And so far, we've served about 100 educators, a little bit more, as far as our Guatemala trip goes. And we are really excited to have such a large group this year. Post-COVID, it's been a little bit of a journey to get back to the numbers that we had previously. It's any number of group is great. They all have their great points, and I think this year it's going to be great. We're actually going to split it up kind of into Group A and Group B. That's one thing that you're going to find out tonight is your housing arrangements. And I've been in contact with a couple of you as far as various things here and there. But I have been in touch with Blanca Solades and Sori Gonzalez, who are the Guatemala site coordinators. Unfortunately, they're not able to make it tonight, but when we have our orientation part 2, they will be there. And we had a good conversation to make sure that everybody was in the most beneficial spot possible as far as homestay goes. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Okay. A couple of quick, can you guys see my screen? Thumbs up. Okay, great. So a couple of quick just asides, and this barcode, I will send you guys the, because of traveling, I haven't been able to kind of revise this with our new cohort 9. So I apologize. Some of this stuff is going to be old. So I'll get you guys an email that has all of the correct links and stuff like that. But the Facebook page is the same. And there's a lot of updates that go out on that. Now that we're all in cohort 9, it's going to be more on email. But I do, especially for pictures and stuff like that, once we're on the trip, it would be good if you are on Facebook to be a part of Spanish4Educators, and that's a good way to kind of share pictures and that sort of thing. WhatsApp, for those of you that have used WhatsApp before, it's really great to be able to share pictures in that way too. If you're a part of a group chat, you can set it up so all of the pictures that you take, that you put on the WhatsApp, go automatically onto your phone. But again, this is the old one, so I'll get you guys the new one for that. And then I believe I should have already shared with you guys. If not, I'll get it to you on email, our share folder, and it has things like packing list, an updated calendar, and different items that will be helpful as we will be getting closer to our departure date. And I'm kind of giving you guys the 30-second version of each of these because I know that we're running up against time with the 40 minutes of Zoom. And also I want to get to the fun stuff, which is kind of where you're going to be housing wise. I know that we already have a really good group of 5 people that signed up for graduate credits through Western State Colorado University. So if you would like, if you're interested in getting 3 fully transferable graduate credits, then please let me know. And I've sent out, I believe, to all the people that initially indicated that they would like to sign up for the course. The kind of seamless part of it is that I'm the instructor of record, and so we have some reflections that happen during the trip, and there's not a lot of the hours that you do for this graduate course are just participating in the trip. So there's a lesson plan and a journal that you need to turn in, but it's not a ton of stuff beyond just participating in the trip. So as far as Guatemala goes, and I believe it, for those of you that have had the book, the Rigoberto Menchú book, which we'll get into in a little bit, it kind of goes into some of this stuff. So hopefully you've at least taken a look at that. But when we talk about the Mayans, Guatemala is kind of the centerpiece of that great Mayan civilization that a lot of people don't realize, especially in other parts of the world, that still exists. It's still fully thriving. It's not like the other civilizations where it's fallen or that it's not in existence anymore. It's fully thriving, and that's one of the great things to be able to be a part of down there. And so that's where a lot of the activities are kind of geared towards that, learning about the Mayan civilization. So unfortunately, after the independence, and especially after the Spanish conquistadors arriving, there's been a lot of conflict, especially more recently between 1960 and 1996. There was a 36-year civil war. So for those of you that have gotten into Rigoberta's book, that's a major element that she talks about, is the struggle, especially for indigenous people during the course of that time. And I believe the book was published in 1981-ish, during the height of that civil war. And so size-wise, slightly smaller than Pennsylvania. So that gives you a comparison as far as the size of Guatemala. It is big, but definitely not like Texas or even, like many parts of the United States. And then culture shock, I like to throw this one in there because for a lot of the people that I've noticed over the course of the last several years, the honeymoon period is it's the dot that you see on that graph that's on the very left, where it's the y-axis says the status of the mind is good. And I have a feeling that that's where a lot of us are going to be throughout the entire time, because this graph was meant for somebody that goes to a semester or even a year abroad. So that's a little bit longer of a time that it takes to be able to kind of go through this. But you may sense that there will be a little bit of culture shock, that it's a good thing that we're in Antigua if that's the case, because there are some opportunities to kind of get back to your comfort zone. If that's the case, because Antigua does have a good mix of kind of Western comforts, whether that's coffee shops, bars, things like that might not be readily available in other parts of Guatemala. And that brings us to this whole idea of the zone of proximal development, which I'm sure a lot of you guys probably came across in your teaching program. And that's the way that I like to frame the trip as far as what you're going through. And it's obviously different for everybody. So we're all individuals. But the whole point of this, just to be able to kind of refresh some of our memories, is that we have our comfort zone, and that's where it's comfortable. But in order to be able to learn, and this is especially geared towards our students, but this is something where with us during this professional development, it's really important to take some risks and to be able to get out of your comfort zone, whether you're at the host family's house, whether you're at your Spanish lessons, whether you're at the El Hato elementary school that we're going to be at, whether we're at a lot of the other cultural activities. But then there's also the danger zone. And so the trick is that if you find yourself in the danger zone where you're ready to shut down, like I'm sure all of us have probably seen students do in the past, it's about what can I do to be able to get out of that danger zone and get back into the taking risk and the growth zone. So I think it's really important to stay cognizant of where you are and do some self-assessment throughout the course of this trip to be able to make sure that we can stay in that, out of our comfort zone, but also out of the danger zone as much as possible. So for example, when we do talk about our placements as far as our host families, you are with people who are in our cohort. But with some of our larger groups, we decided to kind of put you guys maybe not with your coworkers. And we can talk about this, and I already have talked about it with one of the groups in particular. And we did kind of make some adjustments with that. But we felt that, for example, it would be easier to be able to just talk in only English if you're with people that make you really comfortable. So that's kind of the reasoning behind mixing in that way, unless, of course, you did put down on your questionnaire, on the registration part 2, there was a part that had, who would you like to stay with on the housing, or for partners and things like that. So we're not going to break up partners and relatives and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, zone of proximal development, really important. Safety and health, obviously, our number one goal. And that's something that we do want to make sure that while you're growing and while we're all having fun, there is some challenges like culture shock we already talked about, traveler's diarrhea, and other waterborne illnesses. Guatemala does have not the best water. It's definitely gotten better over the years, but it's still basically required to be able to drink water not from the faucet. So that's the number one thing that I wanted to pass along, is it's super important when you're drinking water not to use the faucet. I know it's really hard to get out of that habit, but it is something that will go a long way to prevent some of those things like traveler's diarrhea. So we'll continue to talk about that. Even when you're brushing teeth, I would recommend to be able to do that out of a water bottle. Vaccinations, there is some information, and I'll pass along this this slideshow so you can have the links. But you can go into the Center for Disease Control and it says what is recommended. I don't think that you need to get malaria because the part that we are in is not rainforest, and it's not been known to have mosquitoes that have malaria. Even Tikal, I don't think has a lot of malaria present there. And for those of us that are going to Tikal, we're only going to be there for a few days. So for those people that are in Tikal, it's kind of your decision, and definitely talk to your doctor. But especially as I've been doing this trip around the world, I've learned that there's certain parts of the world that have more presence of malaria than others, and I don't think that Tikal does. So definitely check with your doctor on that, or health department. I know that I needed to check in with my health department as opposed to my doctor. Developing country, Guatemala is a developing country. So the average income is $5,300 a year. They do have poor water quality. We already talked about that. They're still recovering from a 40-year conflict. We already talked about that. It's the people are sensitive about the conflict, and so it's not something that I would bring up with a random Guatemalan that you meet for the first time. But if you have a dinner conversation after a few days with your host family, the La Señora de su Casa, then yes, that would be definitely a great opportunity to be able to get their experience of going through that time. And also at the Spanish school, that's also a great topic to be able to talk about that. But the Human Development Index is definitely down there. It's in a similar echelon as Nicaragua, Ghana, Morocco, Iraq, as far as the development indicator as presented by the United Nations. So just keep that in mind. And then, like I said, with the water, your family homestay, you should always have water, as well as your Spanish school. We will have water at the school. So definitely one of the items on the packing list is a water bottle to be able to bring onto your plane empty, but to be able to make sure you have a water bottle so that you can always fill it up, whether it be at your host family or at the Spanish school. Usually if you're going out to eat or drink in Antigua, it'll be fine. But it never hurts to ask, for example, if your salad has been washed with bottled water or not, because sometimes, for example, with salads, they wash it off with tap water, et cetera, et cetera. So But the majority of your meals are going to be with the host family, and they've done this plenty of times before as far as making sure to keep all of our participants healthy. So don't worry about it as long as you eat at the host family, you should stay healthy. It's usually when people do eat out that they tend to get traveler's diarrhea and that sort of thing. Personal safety. It's definitely a safe city. I know that the Department of State in the US sometimes will send out warnings about Guatemala and that sort of thing. Typically, the main danger in Guatemala is with Guatemala City. And even there, it's only in certain zones. So the big city is divided up into, I think, like 20 zones or something like that. And like 2 of them are unsafe, but the other ones are, for the most part, safe. Antigua prides itself on tourism. They know the importance of tourism. And so they even have a tourist police that's a separate branch of their police that's in the Parque Central for tourists. And so common sense is always great as far as, the main times that we have had issues safety wise is when, late night outings, like nothing usually happens good after midnight. So one time we did have somebody that went for a jog, and there's this really cool area that is kind of on a mountainside that's a really good place for a jog, but it's also kind of off the beaten path. And they stopped kind of to take a picture of a butterfly or something, and somebody took their phone. So not to be able to have your flashy jewelry and to be able to have your iPhone out, especially if you're by yourself. So just common sense, have a buddy, that sort of thing. Money, it's not as much of an issue now as it was before, but depending on your bank, you would probably want to call your bank to let them know that you're going to be going to Guatemala and what the dates are. I know my bank, somehow they figure out, even during this trip, I never had to necessarily call them. So it depends bank to bank. Also check on what the international fees are for example, right now I'm using my credit card for everything because my credit card does not charge an international service fee. But if I were to use my debit card, they would. And also getting money from the ATM, they do. So things like that. It might be beneficial to bring some cash and to be able to, on the first day that we have our city tour, I'll show you guys, we'll take a trip by the bank and we'll also go by the ATM. So don't feel like you need to go to the bank and get Guatemalan quetzales in the US. But if you want to have a little bit on hand, then that's fine. But you really won't need to spend money on much of anything unless you want to get like, touristy items and stuff like that. So we'll go by the bank on the first day to be able to show you guys where it is in case you need to go at that time or later. And other than that, I've got a link to the packing list, which I'll just send a link to the share folder because it has all of this stuff on it. So I'll make sure to do that. A couple things to keep in mind as far as the packing list is that Antigua is at a higher altitude. It's at, I believe, about 4,000 feet elevation, which is similar to many areas of Colorado. And so when we are there in July, the locals consider that to be winter because it's the rainy season. So they call it winter. However, sometimes that we are there, there's this thing called canicula, which is basically a dry period in between the rainy season, but plan for some regular afternoon rain, which is one reason why we have our Spanish classes to be happening indoor during that time. Because we run into that regularly. And yeah, so on the packing list, you'll notice that there's a lot of rain type stuff. Even if you have a small umbrella, if you can fit it in there, that might be a good idea. However, on the city tour, we also go by the grocery store. So it's kind of like a Walmart type place. So they do have like a section that has clothes, umbrella, things like that. So you can always get it at that time as well, especially depending on when you get your plane, sometimes they have baggage restrictions and you're not able to bring a lot of baggage without them charging you. For gifts, my recommendation is that you get something small that represents like either your family or your town or something like that, for both your homestay family, senora, or señor. We have one house this year that it's a señor de la casa. And so 2 items, something that you might have a personal connection with. I'm a swimmer, so I might get something that's like a swim goggle ornament or something like that. Other frequently asked questions. This time of year, they don't do daylight savings. They're smart. So sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's on the same time zone as Midwestern, and sometimes it's on the same time zone as Colorado. So right now, and for our trip, they are on the same time zone as Colorado. So that's something that you can tell anybody that is staying behind that would like to get in touch with you. The day of the arrival on Sunday, so the families that you'll be staying with, they do have Sundays that are kind of their rest day. So there's a lot of going to church and just resting that happens. So when you do arrive, depending on when you arrive, they know that with a long day of travel, then that's something that they will get you like a little sandwich or something like that, or depending on what you put down on your registration part 2 as far as your dietary needs. But other than that, if you do arrive early on Sunday morning, then I would probably bring some quetzales, or just make sure that your credit card will work, because a lot of the places in Antigua will take credit card, but plan on maybe going out and exploring a little bit and getting something to eat as far as a meal in Antigua, especially if you arrive early on Sunday morning. But you'll know that once you get your flights. We still are putting together our excursions. So if what you have on your invoice is not correct as far as whether or not you're going to be joining us in either Tikal or Lake Atitlan, then please let me know as soon as possible so I can fix that on your invoice. But other than that, what is reflected on your invoice is the groups that we have as far as who's going to Tikal after the trip is over and who's going to Lake Atitlan that middle weekend. I guess we're leaving Saturday morning through Monday at noon. So for 2 nights in Lake Atitlan. And other than that, I would like to say, yeah, I agree as far as right around June 16th to be able to have that Tikal excursion figured out. So if you're going to not go to Tikal, please let me know by that time. But other than that, I'm assuming that you are, if it is reflected in your invoice. Lake Atitlan is a really great opportunity to get some rest and relaxation. It's a beautiful Airbnb that we have that's right on the lake. There's a beach. There is the, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. Here's a picture of kind of what it is. And we're right here in Cerro del Oro. And so it's a really good vantage point of all of there's a volcano right there. There's 3 volcanoes in and around Lake Atitlan. So, and then other than that, guys, let me switch over to let me see if I got this here right. No. Oh, yeah. Okay. Need to go somewhere else. Sorry, guys. As I am pulling up the homestay families, is there any, and now that I'm on there, I can check out my chat here. Okay, so if you do have any questions as far as any of the items that we've gone over so far, please either throw it in the chat or you can unmute yourself and say what your question is. Yeah, Aide.
No, Lisa.
Lisa.
Okay. Um, is it possible for me to go to Saint Joseph Catholic Church as Antigua alone, or do I have to have somebody with me?
The main Catholic church that we're going to be near is okay, Katie, I see your question too. Um, there is the main Catholic church on the city center, as well as Lisa, help me out here.
Okay.
Other Lisa.
Oh,
It's
Lisa
not it's not
Edwards.
St. Joseph's. It's not St. Joseph's.
Okay.
But I can tell you that if you'd like to go to a church, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be fine. And that
Okay.
kind of goes along with Katie's question as far as shorts or pants. As far as kind of dress type stuff, is that um, if you are planning on going inside of a church, that would be the one time that I would say make sure you have pants, make sure you're covering your shoulders and that sort of thing as far as dressing conservatively. Um, as well as when we go into the school, the elementary school that we're working with, I would say to make sure that you're bringing maybe an outfit or two that are kind of reflective of what you would wear at your regular work. So kind of, I don't want to say business casual, but something that it depends on what school that you teach at, because at my high school, it's t-shirts are okay. And I would say maybe something that for gentlemen has a collar and for ladies, a blouse, um, which I'm still trying to get my wife to explain what that exactly is. But yeah, something that you would probably wear to school for the home or for the school shadowing days.
Steve, do you want me to hop in and talk about excursion type stuff? Because for me last year, it was amazing to go to different places with my teacher.
Yeah, and that is another opportunity to be able to kind of check out the city. Like if Lisa says she wants to visit this Catholic church, then that would be a great opportunity. You're right, Lisa, to be able to bring that up with your teacher and say, let's go for a walking kind of tour today, which is one of the great things about having private lessons is you can do that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Jen, Kathy, and Kestrel are saying for the gifts, you said bring something for the host family, and the other one is for our Spanish instructor. Yes, that's correct. So two small things like size of like a coffee mug or something that's kind of like a just a tidbit type thing as far as that represents whether it be you or your culture or your town or city or state. Um, Sarah and Jason and Frenny are wondering about the process for washing clothes. And the main thing as far as that goes is that there are laundromats all over the place and they charge by the pound and it's very cheap. And they do wash and folds. So they usually will wash it and fold it and have it ready to go within 24 hours or sometimes same day. So on our city tour, we'll definitely point out a couple of those spots as well that are very close to our host family locations. And Aide said, are there places where it is safe to swim or run in Antigua? Definitely run, not as much swim. I actually, when I was swimming last year, there's some Guatemalans that I swim with, and they said Guatemala City is well, there is a hotel in Antigua, I think. Hotel Santo Domingo is like a five-star hotel. But unfortunately, I don't think they allow people from the outside. But to run, yes. And again, I would say there's plenty of great spots to run, especially this Cerro de la Cruz, which is very close. It's kind of on the way of where we go to for our school, our El Hato elementary school. Lisa, did you ever go and do a jog over at Cerro de la Cruz?
Nope, not a jogger.
Okay. Yeah, I know we've had quite a few people that have even they've said like will you pick us up at the top of Cerro de la Cruz? And they'll jog up to the top, and then our Luis, our transport guide extraordinaire, picks them up. But
Steve, we took a walk up there and back. I mean, it's, you know, it's definitely doable. It's a hill, but
it is. So for some people, you might want to do the other way where you can go downhill. Okay, well, let me go ahead. I know I'm running up against time here. If I do get canceled out, it's
I have
gave me the
one more
10 minutes.
question.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Is it possible for me to request to stay with the family that they don't speak any English at all so that I can emerge really good? Is it possible?
It is. And in fact,
Thank you.
as Lori and Lisa will attest to, that is usually the case. And so there's usually one member of the family that speaks broken English, but if there's ever anything that like you absolutely need to know something, or if it's an emergency, then we have a phone number list that's on the share folder. But that is the case for all of the families, actually. So you're in luck, because we do want it to be a immersive experience. And so with the people that will be staying with you, that's something that, you know, I would definitely let them know right away that, you know, I'm hoping to speak only Spanish or whatever the case may be. And we do encourage all of our participants at dinner time. And this is more to respect because the host family will be also eating there and be in the kitchen and the dining room or whatever, is to speak only Spanish at